Welcome to the 623rd meeting of the Economic Club of New York in our 114th year. I'm Barbara Van Allen, President and CEO of the club. I hope everyone has had a wonderful summer and welcome back to the fall. We at the club are very enthusiastic to be with you all as we kick off our season of events with today's webinar. As many of you know, the Economic Club of New York is the nation's leading nonpartisan forum for the discussion of economic, social, and political issues. And we feel strongly that our mission is as important today as ever as we continue to bring people together as a catalyst for civil conversation and innovation. A special welcome to our members of the ECNY class of fellows, a select group of very diverse, rising, next-generation business thought leaders, as well as students from the CUNY Graduate Center, the Columbia Business School, Rutgers University, and the Gabelli School of Business at Fordham University. It's a pleasure for me to now welcome our special guest, Hans Vestberg, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Verizon. Prior to assuming the role of CEO in 2018 and the role of chairman in 2019, Hans served as Verizon's Chief Technology Officer and President of Global Networks from 2017, with responsibility for further developing the architecture for Verizon's fiber-centric networks. At Verizon, he's focused on transforming the business's 2.0 customer-centric strategy, leading the company to be first in the world to deploy 5G home and mobile technology. Before joining Verizon, Hans served for 6 years as president and CEO of Ericsson, a multinational networking and telecommunications equipment and services company headquartered in Sweden that provides 35% of the world's 2G, 3G, and 4G mobile network infrastructures. Hans was a founding member of the International Telecommunications Union Broadband Commission for Digital Development, where he led climate change and digital health initiatives. He's a board member of BlackRock, the UN Foundation, and the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, and a leading voice at technology and global economic conferences, including the Consumer Electronics Show, the Mobile World Congress, and the World Economic Annual Meeting Forum in Davos. Today's program will be a conversation, and we are very fortunate to have CNBC correspondent Frank Holland as our moderator. We're going to end promptly at 12:45, and as a reminder, this conversation is on the record, and we do have media on the line. So without further ado, Frank, the mic is yours.
Madam President, thank you very much. Hans, thanks for being open to having this conversation.
Yeah, now I know it's on the record and the media, so I better shape up.
Yeah, long resume. We only have time for like one question. No, so Barbara kind of spelled out some of your resume. Not only are you a CEO, you're a sportsman, a former professional handball player, former president of the Swedish Olympic Committee.
Yes.
You're also a passionate tech advocate.
Yep.
You were one of the keynote speakers at CES, where you spoke very passionately about connectivity.
Yeah.
You're also a father. And you
yes,
said
I
that
am.
Your father was your greatest influence.
He was. Yeah. He was a fantastic man, and he was actually. So my life was focused only on sports until I was probably 25. And my father was my coach from I was 6 years old, playing in the little league to actually playing in the first or the second division in team handball in Sweden. So he followed me until I was 23 years old, then I emerged on another team. So yeah, he probably had more influence than any other people that I ever met in my life.
Right, and there's even more to you than that. I'm just naming a few of the highlights. So let's talk about all that combined along with these other things that we don't have time to mention. How does that guide your leadership of Verizon?
No, I think that the values I got from my father early on, especially around teamwork and not believing that you are somebody better than anybody else and seeing that you get the diversity out of the team, the respect from everybody else. I think that comes from my father, and that is guiding me today, even though I have a little bit larger team than I'm managing today. Try to keep that simple rules with respect for people. Everybody's valuable. Diversity is important for success. Everybody's different. Build on the strength instead of the weaknesses.
So Verizon a bit different than a handball team, but you're still part of the team. You're the captain of this team.
Yeah.
How do you captain this team? What guiding principles do you have?
I would say that I have several different types that I have developed over the years, but in general, I think it in three dimensions of my leadership. First, there is my self-leadership. I mean, if you're going to lead others, you need to start understanding yourself before you lead others. So I work a lot about assessing myself, how I can improve and how I perform. And of course, talk to a lot of people. Secondly is how you deal with people around you, the people above you, on the sides and below you, because all three stakeholders in an organization like this is enormously important. So I have models for how I work with my bosses. I have a boss contract usually with all my bosses, but I also have models for how I work with all my employees, etc. And then finally, the third piece of my leadership is very much centered on the strategic leadership, that I spend time on the absolutely critical things of the company and the things that only I can do, because I can do a lot of things in a company like this where I like to do things, but there are certain things only I can do, and I spend time on that. So it's a three-pronged leadership model, which I basically tell everybody in my company to do the same. So all our leadership training is based on that three-pronged model.
So with those three prongs, success, how do you define it? Stock price for a company like yours, that's one way. It's a bit of a crude way. Are there other metrics of success that you can look at?
I think that over time, share price and shareholder value is an important one. But the more I've grown over time, I also understand that I have four stakeholders that I need to see that they are in a positive momentum. And that means the customers, if they don't happy and find the financial will be bad, my employees has to also aspire and feel empowered in the company to deliver to the customers, ultimately financial. And then we have a huge role in the society. And that's for me is so important in the size of company that we are, that we think about all those four stakeholders, because ultimately that will create the best value for all four of them, and you can not really compromise in between them. During COVID, you had to compromise because then some are more important than others. But in a normal steady state, all are equally important, and you need to deliver on all four of them in order to have shareholder value, employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and having an impact, positive impact on society.
All right, anybody out there that has a TV or is on the internet knows that Verizon's very focused on 5G right now, correct?
Yes.
All right. But when you started off as CEO back in August of 2018, this is pre-5G. You didn't roll out 5G until April of the next year. Looking broader, the NASDAQ was at 7,600. Now it's almost doubled in that time, just to show the importance of tech. And just for kind of a pop culture reference, back then we were on the iPhone X or 10, whichever one you would talk about it. It was a while ago. Or it feels like a while ago.
Yeah, it feels like a while ago, yes.
So in today's world, with the focus on 5G, how are we going to see 5G change our lives? How is it going to change your company?
I think that one thing that I've learned through all the Gs, 1G, 2G, 3G, and 4G, and 5G, is that 1G to 4G was predominantly designed for consumers. You took the phone from the beginning to speak in, and ultimately you can stream services on the 4G phone. When the design of 5G was done in 2009, it was actually thought that we could replace, or we should replace, sort of the last mile with wireless for industries and society. So many of the capabilities of 5G is actually extremely low latency. So you can control robotics, for example, or you can have massive amount of devices connected at the same time. That's not people, it's devices. So there's many use cases that are geared for industries that we're working with, but it's also for consumers. And one of the big advantages with 5G is, of course, that they're so powerful. So I can actually do home broadband with 5G instead of doing fiber or any other sort of cable operated to the last mile. So that's how many of the things are coming out right now. For the consumers, what you're seeing right now is a vast majority of technologies like AR, VR that can only be supported if you have 5G. And if you're in stadiums, huge populated areas, the wireless technology 5G is the only one that sustains everything there. So it's a lot of things coming out. People ask me, but we've heard about 5G for a long time, nothing is happening. I can tell you 5G is going faster than 4G did when 4G came.
That's interesting.
And people don't realize, because you start talking about the technology pretty early on, like in 2017, 18, then you build the networks, then the devices comes, and then sort of the application comes. And so we have more than 20% of all our consumers, and we have the most consumers in this market on wireless that has a 5G phone already. So, but the more people have a 5G phone, the more application comes. So the next years will be the years that this going to happen.
So that's right now. We know what 5G can be used for. You just announced a partnership with the NFL for 5G. Earlier this year, you announced a partnership with MasterCard for 5G for payments. So a lot of different partnerships, a lot of different applications. Take us back to August 1st, 2018. I know you were involved in kind of the infancy of 5G. What was your initial plan for this 5G transition when nobody knew where it was or what it was? Nobody knew what you would use it for. What was the initial plan?
So the initial plan was very clear. I mean, that was the reason I joined Verizon. I wanted to go from being part of the research and development of the technology at Ericsson to be part of the implementing it. So I had a vision clear what I want to do with 5G. And internally, we call it slide 5. And it's always slide 5. In any deck you would see where we go with the board, they said it's a slide 5. That is the 5G strategy of Verizon. That I designed somewhere in 2017. And actually, we still do it, use it today. And regardless on where the page is, it's always slide 5. And that is outlining the 3 use cases we have for 5G. That's a mobility case. And then it's the fixed wireless access. And then what we call 5G mobile edge compute, where you basically bring the cloud infrastructure out to the edge of the network, but you use wireless. Those are the 3 use cases. And this is the first time in the history, actually, that a carrier like us have 3 use cases on one build. We build the network once, and we have 3 use cases on the same network. Usually, you build a network, you have 1 use case, and you have to build another type of network for another use case.
Interesting. So you had some ideas to start off with. What have you learned along the way, whether it be about rolling out the tech or how consumers are going to kind of interact with that tech?
I learned a lot, of course, with the challenges of new technologies. And we were first in the world with 5G mobility, first in the world with fixed wireless access, first in the world with 5G mobile edge compute. And we like to be first because we both want to have the best network, but we also want to be pioneering in technology for our customers. So we have learned a lot in that, because in the beginning, when you have new technologies, you always make some mistakes, but we have corrected them over time. And of course, sometimes your time horizon is shorter in your head than it actually takes. And this is the biggest telecom market in the world. So of course, it takes time. But I think everything we see right now is going in line what we really thought.
So let me talk to you about decision-making. Some of your decisions were making those partnerships with the NFL, making that partnership with MasterCard. What guides your decisions when you're making these kind of decisions? They're going to impact not only you and your tenure as CEO, but as you mentioned, the stock price of the company, the workers, your customers. What are the principles that help you make decisions?
So we took many decisions in 2018 in what we call the Verizon 2.0. One of the decisions was, of course, what is our strategy? And that's a network as a service. But we also took a couple of other decisions where we decided not to operate. We said we're not going to be in content because we think other companies are better. That's why we developed this model with Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, where we are exclusive to them. And what we do is we're using the best network, the distribution, that is, we have more consumers than any direct-to-consumer in the US. And we use the brand, and then we can partner with the best brands in order to create a new service where we can give our assets and they give their assets, and together we do something more. And that we have done with Apple Music, Discovery Plus, Disney Plus, gaming, and all are exclusive with us. So that's a big differentiation with others. That's on the consumer side. On the business side, we basically have the same holistic idea that we build a platform of interaction and technology, and then we're partners. We try to pick the best partner in any industry. MasterCard is a good sort of example, but we have basically for every industry, healthcare, retail, fintech, we would have 1 or 2 leading companies we work with develop new services. That was a thought process, using our assets to create a new strategy.
So was that guided by your experience as someone in sports? You want to build a team? Because it sounds like you're trying to build your own dream team. You're pulling some free agents from different industries and bringing them on your team.
Yeah, I think it was clearly, when you go back to a company, you always look into what is the DNA, what is our real strength. And the real strength of Verizon is we always have the best network. We have fantastic distribution. We have a great brand that people really rely on, a reliable network. Let's build on that instead of trying to be something else. And we had 5G coming up, so I knew that we had growth potential with that, instead of then going somewhere else and trying to work out in an area we didn't have the DNA. And remember, I haven't told you, but before coming up to my decision, I actually talked to 250 of the senior leaders one-on-one for 30 minutes in order to see what are the top leaders of the company thinking. So I had the input from the 250, I had my own vision, and then we matched them and see, okay, how far away are my ideas from what they think? I would say 80% was the same, 10% was different, 10% we calibrated.
God, that's a very time-consuming effort. 250 people, 30 minutes each?
Yeah, and then I took 20 people for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you ever concerned that they were, I know you said it was 80, 10, and 10, that they were more telling you what you wanted to hear as opposed to what you needed to hear?
They didn't know what I thought because I never gave it to them.
Oh.
So I gave them the questions. So I had written my own white paper as I came in because I wanted to tell the board what I was planning to do. So I had never shared that with the top 250. So I had the questions outlined because I knew I had my answers in the white paper. So they had no idea what I was skewing to. So that was my whole idea, to actually first listen to them and see that maybe I was thinking wrong and I can correct with their input. And I also gave people a chance to speak to me. Remember, I was a newcomer in the company. Right. I've only been 1 year in the company when I became the CEO of a company in that moment having 150,000 people. So, of course, many people wonder, okay, that Swede coming in here, what can he do? Has he any idea what we're doing? So it was also a job for me to create a less of a barrier to the guy that they had not ever heard about.
So you mentioned being a European CEO. You and Michael Maybach, when I interviewed both of you about the MasterCard partnership, you both mentioned that. You really pointed it out that you're leading basically US-based companies as European CEOs. What's the difference? Spell it out for us.
Yeah, it's no real difference. I mean, I was leading a super international company that had operation in 180 countries. It was not a Swedish company. It was a multinational company. I think about Verizon as a multinational, even though many people believe we're only in the US, our business, the business is global. Right. And we serve probably 98% of the Fortune 500. So we're global, but of course, consumer business in the US. There are some differences in the US.
You're hedging.
Yeah,
you're
trying to hedge.
No. You're going to have to give us a real. There's too many people here. They want to hear a real answer. Is there something that European CEOs do better than US CEOs? Generally?
No. You need to operate a little bit different. In a European environment, I would say people take your word lightly. They say that there was a good advice from the CEO. Let's see what we can do better. In a US environment, many times people are listening exactly what you say and just do it. So I think that you as a leader need to be a little bit careful and how you speak and how direct you are. In Europe, I would be super direct to people. You do this. I wouldn't do that here. I would say, hey, these are some ideas. Why don't you think about them in order to get the right creativity, but also give the empowerment you want to get to people. So it's a little bit different how you operate. But in general, I love to work for Verizon. I love to be here, so don't worry.
No one said any different. So it sounds like you're also speaking to the difference of U.S. workers. And right here in the U.S., we have a lot of companies are saying there's a labor shortage. I know Verizon is hiring. Are U.S. workers substantially different than workers in other parts of the world? Are there countries?
No. I think that they are equally ambitious, and I think the trends that we see in the rest of the world is happening here. Our employees are more caring about the purpose of the company, how we shop in society, and where we speak up, etc. So I think that trend doesn't really matter where you are in this world. I see the trends are so clear in that. And the youth is curious about leadership, and which they never were the case when I started. I was happy with a paycheck. I mean, hey, I work for a company. I think it's much more demanding youth today, which is great because that's creating an even better company. You put guys like me on the edge all the time to be prepared and do my right thing. So no, I don't think there's a difference here compared to other countries.
Well, I think there's a difference pre and post pandemic. I think people are now questioning their jobs a bit more.
Yeah.
Looking for more room to grow, maybe even more satisfaction from their job. A lot of people are switching jobs now. Wages are also going higher. So as you're looking to hire people, and I know you're not going to do this personally, but as the company does, how do you deal with these twin forces? People looking to get more out of their job, including more compensation.
The brutal disruption we've had in our society, but usually you have a progression of everything, and then you manage through the progression. But with this this bad situation with the COVID, of course, it's an enormous disruption to work and work-life balance, health. So, of course, people are starting reconsidering what to do and what is right for them. That's healthy, but it's put a lot of stress in the system. That goes for technology as well. I mean, our technology, which I have to say has held up fantastically, but the patterns of using our technology has dramatically changed. Usually we can manage that over time. Now it's also disruption immediately. And that also goes for employees thinking through what they want to do in the future. And I think it's going to be opportunities for all. I think we as employers are going to be more flexible, much more hybrid, because we've found out it works. There's going to be pieces where you have to be with people because still people interaction is great, but definitely there's never sort of, we go back and, hey, we're going to be like in 2019 again. That's never going to happen. Then we just forget about it.
Well, I think we really have to talk about the elephant in the room, COVID-19. That's why we're not at the Economic Club of New York right now. That's why we're in your offices. You mentioned we're never going to go back to 2019. I think we all know that. But how are we going to interact with 5G differently now that the pandemic has happened, as opposed to how we were going to interact with it before, at least how you thought we were going to interact with it?
I think that one thing that was a change for us, because when we thought about our technology in the beginning, we built out every dense urban area because that's where you have challenges with capacity. And there is where you want to do enormous new innovation in a stadium or at a big central place like here in New York. So we built out our millimeter wave spectrum there in order to get, and of course with COVID, people are not on those places, or they were not. Now they're coming back. So I think it was a short interruption. Now we see enormous growth of usage of high bandwidth in urban places, stadiums, public locations. So I have to say that's one. The other is, of course, broadband becomes so important. I mean, people will continue to do remote learning, telehealth, doing work from home. So broadband becomes even more important. And we'll leapfrog probably 5 to 7 years in this progression I talked about. We leapfrog 5 to 7 years where we should have been 5 to 7 years. And things that I have been talking about for years, we need remote learning in order to get everyone, regardless where they're born, where they are, to get an education. Remote learning is the only way. Telemedicine is the same. In places on this earth, everybody cannot have a hospital. I was born in Sweden where there's a hospital and a school very close. Not everyone will have that. 5G and broadband will be the only enablers for that. And so that's the silver lining of all this, that we have leapfrogged that. And I see enormous push from government, private companies to see that we are bridging that gap.
So you're in the telecommunications business. You're in a tech-focused business. A lot of other CEOs watching this, they're in different kinds of business. If you can give them some advice about how to integrate 5G into their business, maybe in a way they haven't thought of, what would it be? No,
I would say if you are an industrial company, then it's very much about having the network coming closer to you and being a private network where you own your own data, because historically there's a lot of data processing you want to do at the edge. MasterCard is a good example. We can process their data and take real-time decisions with 5G because the latency is low. That's in industrial use cases. Private 5G network is what we're discussing with every huge corporation right now, meaning you can use your phone inside the corporation and it's a private network and every data is just inside. You move outside the premises and you're on the commercial network of Verizon. And there you can start thinking what you can do. And in general, I think then bringing the compute and the storage closer to you can also change the way you design your products, because suddenly you don't need all the processing capacity, the memory, the extraordinary cameras in the device. You can put them in the network.
Oh.
So that's a huge leapfrog how you need to think. So basically we can take out things from robotics and put in a network instead of having a robotics. And then you reduce the cost and of course the efficiency of that type of device. So a lot of those type of things are happening at the moment. But it's of course a learning process how you do it. It's a new technology. But we are on the extreme, I would say, technology edge in this, because we are basically the only one in the world that has a 5G mobile edge compute with Amazon and with Microsoft. So
you mentioned the business-to-business applications. Me, just as a person with a cell phone or a mobile phone, an iPhone, whatever you want to call it, what's the difference that what difference will I see today when it comes to 5G that I wouldn't have seen in, let's say, March of 2020 before all this happened?
So I'll give you an extremely good example. So I went to the NFL opener earlier this week in Tampa. So I had my 5G phone with me, and I went into the Bucks app. And there, high up, it said, would you want to have multi-view, 5G multi-view? So I pushed on that, one click. Suddenly I have 7 cameras, all from the stadium. And I can click in between them. I can have 7 cameras myself sitting in there because the latency and the capacity is so good on 5G. So I can see the game, but I can have 7 different cameras here. And even at home, you have only one view. On the phone now, you have 7. That's one of thousands of ideas that we have. And right now we integrated the multi-view in all the different teams' apps in order for the fans to have in-stadium experience that is new, innovative.
Interesting. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Which view did you choose, the Cowboys or the Bucks?
No, I follow usually the quarterback to see what they're doing after they've thrown, because as a handball player, you want to see what are they doing. They throw the ball, are they looking, what are they doing? That's I thought was cool, but yeah.
Tom Brady or Dak?
Tom Brady was there, but they had also, I looked at both of them.
I know you sponsor the whole league, so you can't really answer.
No, I cannot.
Let's get to something you can answer. 5G and cybersecurity.
Okay.
Cybersecurity has been a bigger and bigger issue. So many issues, whether it be Microsoft Outlook or other hacks that have happened. How is 5G going to keep networks safer?
So, remember I talked in the beginning that the design of 5G was different than 1G to 4G because that was the consumer. So one of the characteristics of 5G is that even higher security on it. So we go from 4 nines, 99.999 security up and adding a 9. Doesn't say so much of people, but what I can say is that the phone is one of the most secure things you have. And because the interaction with the radio is even more encrypted than ever in the 5G era. So it's actually going to the next step of security. And that's why private 5G networking becomes very interesting for companies, because the safety of 5G private network compared to Wi-Fi is far better.
All right, we're going to get a little bit in the weeds in 5G. I had to Google this myself. So earlier this year, you paid $53 billion for 161 megahertz of C-band. At the time, you said it would enable 5G to about 100 million people. Can you explain why you made this decision? What does this mean for Verizon? What does it, again, mean for me, somebody with an iPhone that wants to stream movies and look up sports?
So now a little bit techy, but just so there are different spectrums you can send your radio signals on. So they can be high up or they can be low band. Low band goes very far, but you have very small pieces of frequency. So the data loads are very, very small. Or you're high up, like in what I call our millimeter wave, enormous throughput, but the range of coverage is not so good. It's shorter. The C-band is in between. It's both giving a good coverage and also very good speed and throughput. And that was one of the areas we didn't have so much of. And right now we will have the most C-band in the market. And in our portfolio, we'll have millimeter wave, C-band, low band. So we basically have everything. And then you need to think about the phone needs to have all those features, all those spectrums. The network has to have it, the radios. So it's a long work you're doing to see that your customer ultimately get it. But to make a simple answer, we got to go and get this fantastic coverage that we have on millimeter wave in the stadiums much further out. And in the first 12 months, we will cover 100 million people with it. And then it goes on from there.
So boards are generally pretty diverse and bright groups. For example, you're on the board of BlackRock, you're on the board of the UN.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a great board, but when you told them you want to spend basically $53 billion in CapEx on something that they can't touch, see, or hold, what was the response?
I think it was a very thoughtful response and a long discussion. This is not an easy decision. I mean, it's enormous lot of money. I mean, even if I would say it was 53 billion Swedish kronor, it would be fantastic a lot. So no, jokes aside, this was a very thoughtful decision. And actually we had worked with it for years. It was not like we called them up, hey guys, I think that's from 2017 when I stepped into the boardroom, we have talked about mid-band. So it was a long journey with the board. They knew it. Then it's an auction. You never know the price in an auction. So, but I would say we had 100% support from the board in our conversation, and we are actually building a network and have frequencies for generations. It's not like during my tenure, right. It's for the guys coming after me and after me that actually going to have the best spectrum position in the market. And if network is our business, is our strategy, this is sort of the liquid we need to have. So it's the right decision. Verizon will always be a telecommunication company, will always be in network. So it's the right decision, but it's a big amount of money.
Right. But still, it's definitely part of your vision. You're a big 5G advocate, so you had to go to them and sell them partly on your vision. Like I'm sure if you go back to the 80s, there was somebody that went to their board like, we should really ramp up production of Betamax. Yeah. That's the future. And it turned out not to be the future. So how do you talk to the individual board members? Is it just like you talk to those 250 employees and explain your vision to them? Or is it all as a group? Kind of explain to everybody out here, how do you sell somebody on a vision that costs $53 billion, a CapEx investment that you can't sell probably right away, you're going to have to hold on to. And as you mentioned, it's for generations and generations when most companies are governed by how they do quarter to quarter.
Yeah, no, you're right. But it goes back to what is your core strategy? What are you trying to achieve? And what's the ambitions of the company? And remember, then I come back to my slide 5. That was the vision, and it's still the vision, and it's not only vision. We're already executing on. Our mobility case is already in the works. More than 20% of our customers are on 5G. They have premium unlimited plans, which is only 5G. So that's already happening. Fixed wireless access on 5G is already happening. And we have launched the mobile edge compute. So we're actually executing all 5 of them. So they have seen it from the rudimentary slide 5, and then we start populating it with KPIs, and they see that's the way we're going. And that this is the enhancer for us to both amplify that business case and accelerate it. So that was the conversation we had. But again, it was not one meeting. It has been over 3 years we've had this discussion. Then, of course, the auction is the auction.
So today, right now, we're in the middle of the pandemic. When the pandemic ends, are we going to see any new use cases for 5G? Are there things that you're thinking about? Maybe you can give us a sneak peek for 5G that we haven't even considered yet, but we need to get past this hump, this bump in the road to even explore that.
No, I wouldn't give you any sneak peeks on any secret things, But what is happening is that as the ecosystem is just increasing all the time, that's where innovation happens. As I said, we have more than 20% of our 120 million consumers having a 5G phone. The more of them that comes on, the more innovation will be. The app stores will have 5G applications. There's going to be more multi-views. There's going to be AR, VR. We're working with companies like Snap to do certain things inside Snap that can only work on 5G. So we work with all of these innovative companies to explore sort of the functionality of 5G so they can develop application on top of it. And we see that is our model.
So outside of business, we mentioned you're more than just a business person. You're also a tech advocate. You're very passionate about the idea of connectivity and what it can do in the world. You're also involved in the UN. What can connectivity do outside of business, just for the world? And why is it so important for us all to be connected?
So this journey started very early on, and some might remember the Millennium Development Goals in 2000 to 2015, and I was exposed to that 2007-8 in Africa. Whereas so when we put up connectivity in Africa, suddenly the village existed, and suddenly they can get information, and suddenly they became part of our society. That was such a strong experience for me. So I felt that, wow, if I can ever speak about the importance of technology for all stakeholders and being connected, I'm going to do that. And I came up with this sort of 21st century's infrastructure, mobility, broadband, and cloud. Every citizen of the world should have mobility, broadband, and cloud, because we will not have the same luxury as some of us had with a hospital and school close by, getting information easily. So mobility, broadband, and cloud can enable that. Since then, I've been working with that. I was part of formulating the SDGs. Of course, I had goal 18, which, everyone knows is 17, so I lost. The goal 18 was actually mobility, broadband, and cloud for every citizen on this earth. We didn't come that way because it was too complicated, probably. Of course, in the Sustainable Development Goals, mobility, broadband, and cloud is involved and embedded in all 17 in order to achieve them. So I still work a lot with that. And of course, when COVID came, I reignited that idea about SDG 18 and actually have rallied some 50, 75 of the CEOs of the world working together with World Economic Forum in something called the Edison Alliance, where I'm the chairman, with a clear goal, getting as many people as possible being connected, focusing on education, healthcare, and financial inclusion. That's what we are starting with. So we have a great group of people and champions working every day, contributing from public and private sector to do it. So yeah, for me, it's sort of what I learned on my journey. And I feel it's important for our company because this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But not only that, it's important to me as a person because I have been fortunate in my life. I want to see that whatever I can do to get more people getting the same opportunity as I had, I want to give them.
You know, speaking of that, at CES, you mentioned some of the social unrest in our nation right now.
Yeah.
How does connectivity, how does tech and 5G, how does that play a part in kind of mending those wounds, or can it? I know a lot of us look at social media as being sometimes dividing.
Yeah.
That's one form of connectivity, just to be honest. Are there other forms of connectivity or 5G? Are there other use cases that can bring us closer together? We've seen the power of connectivity to create social change. For example, the Arab Spring.
Yeah.
Can it bring us together?
Of course, there are different views in our society in these days, but I think that ultimately the more possibility to get information to people by being connected is better. Then we just need to see that they get the breadth of information. The worry with the society today is that you're doubling down because of your interest all the time. Let's assume you like an NFL team. You follow the NFL team on social media. You get a lot of information on that. I think it's important that we continue to broaden the experiences because that is bridging gaps in our society. And not saying what is right or wrong, but we need to just do that. And I think that connectivity is going to do that. And I remember just as a side, the first time you connect people in Africa, the first thing they do, they Google their own village. That's the first thing they do. They want to know what exists about our village. So learn about, because they've only talked to each other what they know.
Right.
But then they Google the village. It's mind-blowing how they think. So that's what I'm saying. That is bridging gap and diversity between people to bring them together. I think for me, it's an important piece. And for governments to reach all the citizens, to give them the same service, healthcare, education, it becomes the vehicle.
So you mentioned some of the gaps that exist. What's the number one gap, you as a person, what's the number one gap in your mind that needs to be addressed?
I think different for different countries. I think in the US, of course, there's a broadband gap to a certain extent. I think that some of us were building crazy. We're buying spectrum 53 billion. So I guess we're going to build every inch of this country. I think you divide the problem in three parts: accessibility, affordability, and usability. Accessibility, that you have broadband. And I think we're building that is in this country constantly. Then it's affordability. Sometimes you cannot afford it, even though there's existing for you. And you don't want to do an inferior service that doesn't work because you need to be on working or healthcare. In many countries, they have a subsidy model for that. As they have for food stamps, they have for broadband.
Right.
And finally, usability. In many cases, you have broadband, you can afford it, but there's no application for telemedicine or remote learning. So then it's useless. Of course, you can stream Netflix if you want to, but that was not my idea. Netflix is fine, nothing against them.
Yeah, nothing against Netflix.
No. It's more about how do you use it to get social inclusion and get the same opportunity for every individual in our society. Then you need also application. And that's how I talk to the US government. I talk to any government in the world. Accessibility, affordability, usability. Where do you need to put your government's effort to see that you make that happen? I think in the US, it should be skewed to the right. Maybe.
Well, what do you mean by that? When you say skewed to the right in the US, that means something different.
No. I count, from left to right. Affordability, accessibility, affordability, and usability. So I think that should be more on the affordability and the usability than accessibility, because all the carriers, my colleagues, competitors, they are building broadband as much as they can all the time. So make the money to work on the other side. I think that's going to be important.
Let's get back to more of you as the CEO. You just mentioned your competitors are building broadband and 5G networks as well.
Yeah, they are.
How do you compete when, in general, 5G is agnostic? I mean, if it's 5G, I would think it's just 5G, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, first of all, you design the network different. So depends on what customer base you have. You can build this network very different. If I only have consumer consumers, I would build a network in one way. I have consumers, I have large enterprise, I have small enterprise, I have a wholesale business, I have public companies, so I would say that, or federal agencies. So I need to build out all the capabilities of 5G. That's very different from the others. That's why I have 3 business cases on my network: fixed wireless access, mobility, and mobile edge compute, or cloud computing at the edge. Not everyone will do that because they don't have those type of customer groups. So you differentiate how you build the network, how the network perform, and then what type of applications you do on top of it.
So going forward with 5G, are you trying to differentiate, or are you trying to compete and be quote unquote better than the other people? In some of the areas I compete. In other, I mean, if you take 5G mobile edge compute, I'm the only one in the market doing that. So I'm creating that market. Fixed wireless access, yeah, that's broadband business. So you compete on broadband in general. It's just that I can do it another way. And then on the 5G mobility, yeah, then I compete not only having the best network, I also compete with the things we talked about in the beginning. I'm exclusive with Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, Apple Music, gaming, like Apple, the arcade, etc. And I build that loyalty on top of it. So you can differentiate a lot. I think we'll differentiate enormously in the market with the brand that we have, the network, and the distribution. You mentioned you stayed away from being a content creator, like some other companies have. So when you skew away from being a content creator, what are you focusing more on, or what things, or maybe on the fringe outside of your core capabilities, are you looking at? Because obviously, content creation is not one of your core capabilities. No, we focus on the network as a service to build a network, and then having platform. Our billing is a platform. We probably bill more people in the US than anybody else. Or platform that we're using for our customer, the network, we can do for other companies. I mean, there are actually cable operators that are using our network to their customers as well. So we monetize the network in different ways because you have a network as a service strategy. So I would say that we have millions and millions of consumers on our network that is not on a Verizon brand. They're on other brands. So that's how I think, to monetize our investment in a network, in the spectrum, all of that, to see that we get the best of return on the investment we've done in order to have as much usage on the network as possible. So I don't want to tie you down to a number, but what's success when it comes to 5G? I think the success of 5G is that we continue to grow and give service to our customer that they really like. I think that's really the success. Remember also, it's very easy to say that, hey, what is the success of 4G? I mean, without 4G, if Verizon and others, if someone had not invested in 4G, I think they would be out of the market today. Right. So you need to understand the stakes are high. You always need to be the latest technology. The device is going to be the latest technology. Everything plays together here. So if you're not into it, you have a big risk of not even winning, So for me, it's not only winning and taking more share. It's also about seeing that I keep what I have, because we have a pretty good business. So you mentioned share. So is the idea to get a certain share of consumers, a certain share of business, a certain share of enterprise? What's the goal? I think that we have a little bit of, usually we work with the growth of our service revenue, that actually our customers are spending more with us every month. And that's why we add in, so think about this. Out of all my customers, I still have a portion that are on a metered plan. I move them into unlimited. Then I move them to unlimited premium. Right. And then I include them in Discovery, Disney Plus. That's how I move up and grow with them. And then, of course, there's a pool of switchers in the market and some new customers coming in that you can capture as well. So, and then on top of that, we're in the middle of the finalization or get approval for acquisition of TracFone, which is 20 million prepaid customers, which is not have been an area for us. So that is also adding into the usage of the network in order to get the best returns. Last question and toughest one. In one sentence, I know you're a talker, in one sentence, what would make your tenure as CEO, which we hope is going to last a long time, what would make it successful? That all the 4 stakeholders are happy when I leave. There you go. Well, wow, you actually did it. Yeah, I know it's hard. Madam President, thank you for the time. Back over to you.
Many thanks to you both. Wow, how exciting about 5G. Anyway, thanks. Your time and insights were so valuable. We really appreciate it. I'm pleased to report that we have many great speakers lined up for the fall. I'm just going to run through a few of those really quickly. John Williams, who's, of course, chair of the Economic Club and president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, will address the U.S. economic outlook on September 27th. Shivani Saroya, the founder and CEO of Tala, on September 29th, will discuss her mission to accelerate the financial health for underserved populations. Charlotte St. Martin, the president of the Broadway League, will be with us September 30th. She'll be discussing the reopening of Broadway. And then later this fall, we have Rob Kaplan from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. We have Gina Raimondo, the Secretary of Commerce, and of course, the Honorable Christopher Wray, who is the Director of the FBI. So, and you'll see there as well, we have Bob Solentic, President and CEO of CBRE, with Mason Morfitt, who's the President, CEO, and CIO of Value Act Capital. That'll be our first event in November. So if you joined us today as a guest and are interested in finding out about membership, please just let the club know through the email on the screen. And finally, I'd like to thank those of our 237 members of the Centennial Society joining us today, as their contributions are the financial backbone of the club and help enable us to offer our wonderful diverse programming. And thank you, everyone. And again, stay safe and healthy. And Frank and Hans, again, just a great conversation. Thank you so much.